Hello students, today we will read the first chapter of class 10 book Footprint Without Feet. It's a supplementary book and the chapter name is Triumph of Surgery by James Herriot. James Herriot was an English surgeon and writer, vet surgeon and writer, and he was born on 3rd October 1916. In England, James Herriot was his pen name. Being a noted vet surgeon, he utilized his vast experience in writing stories about animals. He wrote a series of books of stories about animals and their masters. So, your book, Footprints Without Feet, Supplementary Reader in English for Class 10. As the title of this story, A Triumph of Surgery. Triumph means here to win, and as you know that this chapter is written by James Herriot, who was an English vet surgeon. Vet means related to the disease, injuries, and treatment of domestic animals. So, now the time for introduction of this chapter. Apparently, this is a simple story with simple subject. It touches a very sensitive issue of handling of loved ones by their elders. It is a duty of the elders to take care of the necessities, nurturing the needs of their beloved is their duty, but they should know when to stop. But if we try to read between the words, the story has much significance for our life as well. One could see many kids who are overweight and spoiled because their parents just try to meet every demand of the kid. As a result, the kid develops into a couch of tattoo, and which is not good for his life. And the title of this story, the story revolves around a dog, Tricky. Its mistress showered her care and made it fat and dull. It did not show any interest even in food of his choice. It did not play, and thus health was declining. And its mistress took it to the narrator, James Herriot, who was a vet by profession. He understood the condition and took it under his care at his place. And it fed him well and let it play, and soon it turned out to be a fit pet. And this was all the gist of this chapter. And now the time for text. It was really worried about Tricky this time. I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street with his mistress, and I was shocked at his appearance. He had become hugely fat, like a blotted sausage. Blotted means, what is the meaning? Blotted here? Blotted means swollen. Sausage means a mixture of finely chopped and cooked meat. And hugely, very much. With a leg at each corner, his eyes bloodshot. Bloodshot means full of red lines. and rheumy. Rheumy means wet eyes, very wet eyes, and stared. Stared means looked intently, straight ahead, and his tongue lolled from his jaw. The doctor, James Harriet, is really worried about Tricky. Tricky had become very fat. He looks like a blotted sausage. His eyes are red and rheumy, and Mrs. Pumphrey is the mistress of the dog. She has given him marled and cod liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks every night. As Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain, he was so listless. Listless means, what is the meaning of listless here? Lifeless. Mr. Harriet. He seemed to have no energy. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition. So I have been giving him some little extras between meals to build him up, some malt and cod liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks at night to make him sleep. Nothing much, really. So she was given him malt and cod liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks every night, but nothing works. And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? Here Mr. Harriet asked, and did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? Oh, I did for a bit. For a bit means a little. But he seemed to be so weak, I had to relent. Relent means soften. He does love cream cakes and chocolates, so I can't bear to refuse him. I looked down again at the little dog. That was the trouble. Tricky's only fault was greed. He had never been known to refuse food. He would tackle a meal at any hour of the day or night, and I wondered about all the things Mrs. Pumphrey had not mentioned. Mention means described here. Are you giving him plenty of exercise? Plenty means more than enough. Well, he has his little walks with me, as you can see, but Huggins, the gardener, has been down with lumbago, so there has been no rain throwing lately. Lately means recently. Means James Harriet realized that Tricky's only fault was greed. Greed for what? Greed for food. Dr. James Harriet advises Mrs. Pumphrey that she must cut Tricky's foods right down. She must give the dog some exercise. She must keep him on a very strict diet, otherwise he will fall ill. As you can see in the picture also, here the dog Tricky, and this one Mrs. Pumphrey, the mistress of Tricky, and here James Harrier, the narrator of this chapter. Narrator means who is telling the story. I tried to sound severe Now, I really mean this. If you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he's going to be really ill, and you must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet. Here, again and again, Dr. James Harriet advises Mrs. Pumphrey that she must cut Ricky's food right down. She must give dog some exercise. She must keep him on a very strict diet, otherwise, he will fall ill. Mrs. Mumphrey wrung her hands. Oh, I will, Mr. Harriet. I am sure you are right. But it is so difficult, so very difficult. She set off, head down, along the road, as if determined. Determined means with a set mind. She set off. Set off means started. Head down and along the road as if determined to put the new regime. Regime means rule pertaining to food into practice immediately. Immediately means at once. I watched their progress with growing concern. Tricky was tottering along in his little tweed coat. She had a whole wardrobe. Wardrobe means a cupboard of these coats for the cold weather and a raincoats for the wet days. He struggled on drooping in his harness. Harness means ornamental coverings. I thought it would not be long before I heard from Mrs. Humphrey. Here and the expected call came within a few days. Mrs. Humphrey was distraught. Distraught means upset, and expected means awaited. Tricky would eat nothing and refused even his favorite dishes. And besides, he had bouts of vomiting. Bouts of vomiting means repetition of fits, and he spent all his time lying on a rug. Rug means blanket, blanket of a thick wool. Panting means gasping and did not want to go for a walk and did not want to do anything. I had made my plans in advance. The only way was to get Ricky out of the house for a period. I suggested that he be hospitalized for a fortnight. Fortnight means here a period of 2 weeks to be kept under observation. Within a few days, Dr. Mr. Harriet receives a call from Mrs. Humphrey. She tells him that Ricky does not eat and has bouts of vomiting. He only lies down on the rug panting, and the doctor advises her that Ricky needs to be hospitalized for a fortnight. He is to be kept under observation. His concern grew even more when he had bouts of vomiting, and the poor lady almost swooned. Swooned means, what is the meaning of swooned here? fainted. She was sure he would pine means to lament and die if he did not see her every day. But I took a firm line. Tricky was very ill, and this was the only way to save him. In fact, I thought it best to take him without delay, and followed by Mrs. Humphrey's wailings. Wailings means lamenting. I marched out to the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. Mr. Harriot had already expected this to happen as he knew that Tricky was suffering because of overeating. He had already made his plan. He took a firm line and said that Ricky must be admitted in the hospital for a fortnight. This suggestion made Mrs. Humphrey almost swooned. Swooned means fainted, and she thought that Ricky could not live even a single day without seeing his mistress. But Mr. Harriet wrapped him in a blanket and took him out of the house and put him in his car. So students, this was the part 1 of this chapter that you have to revise, and tomorrow we will continue this chapter. Thank you.